Hello and welcome to my weekly livecast. I'm Jamie from Stonemeyer Games, and I am here as usual every Wednesday at 10 o'clock St. Louis time to talk about Stonemeyer Games news, to answer any questions that you have, as long as they're not spoiler questions, and discuss some random topics, some random things that I've been talking about, doing things like that, playing games that I've been playing, things of that sort. I usually start with my chocolate of the day today. And today I'm going to go with, I don't have them to show you on camera, but Nerdy Bird Bakery here in St. Louis. They made some delicious chocolate brownies the other day, and I ordered some of them and have really been enjoying those chocolate brownies. So today's chocolate of the day for me are chocolate brownies from Nerdy Bird Bakery. What are you indulging in today? What's your treat of the day or your comfort food of the day? And comfort, I think, is kind of the theme of today and this week because this past Sunday I posted my top 10 favorite comfort games. The types of games that just are easy to get to the table, easy to get to my table specifically. So they're very, I think, person specific. What's comfortable to you is different than what's comfortable to me. But games that are easy to get to the table, they just feel nice. It's not hard to remember the rules. Yeah, it was fun to make that list of comfort games that I'm just happy to get to the table and play and have a good time with, and maybe not burn my brain too much in them, but still have some interesting decisions while I play. I see some great people joining us today. Thank you for joining in. I see Tim here. I want to give Tim a quick shout out because Tim came all the way to St. Louis this past weekend to do a poetry reading with a group of his poetry friends. And it got rained out, even though it wasn't actually rainy when he was doing it. The park that he was going to do it at in Tower Grove Park got flooded. And then they were going to do it at a local pub, and I think that canceled too. So Tim, I hope you still had a good time with the poetry reading at the host house that you ended up doing it at, and that you had some good creative juices flowing with your fellow poets. What else happened this weekend? I had a little barbecue that I went to this weekend where we played, and it wasn't really a gaming barbecue. We just sat outside and ate good food. I made some chocolate peanut butter pudding pie to share at this outing. And we did play a game of Telestrations, though. I posted that on Instagram today with a pretty fuzzy photo. But I always love Telestrations, especially when you have a ton of people and you're passing those books around the table. If you're not familiar with that, with Telestrations, you write a word in this whiteboard booklet, and then you pass that to the next player, and they have a minute to draw that word, and then they pass it to the next player, and that next player has to write what they think the drawing is, and so on and so on. Usually, these images and these words become very distorted compared to what they start out with. And it's fun at the end. We always do it where there's like a little bit of story time at the end where one by one we hold up the book and we say, okay, here was the word and they drew this, and you show them what was on the next drawing, and that makes a kind of a fun. I don't know. It was one of my favorite party games. It's very low pressure for an introvert like me because most of what you're doing is just in this little book and no one else can see it. And even when you're on the spotlight, you're kind of putting other people in the spotlight through their drawings. You're not actually on the spotlight yourself. So easy party game for an introvert like me. What else is going on today? I have game night tonight. I started doing weekly game nights again, in-person game nights, in addition to my bi-weekly virtual game nights. Because fortunately, all of my friends are vaccinated, so we're able to get together safely. And also, not, I guess, in these times of the Delta variant, we're not just vaccinated, but we're also still wearing masks when we go outside, or especially public spaces outside in the outside world. And we're also still essentially self-isolating. So um, that has helped my confidence in getting together with other people and not being as worried about the disease, the pandemic, COVID, but still being, because we're so aware of it and so protective about it. Just trying to look after ourselves and after our friends. So Tim says we had a lot of fun in St. Louis and other stops in Missouri over the weekend. They enjoyed Cahokia Mounds, the Arch, and great food. And he says, speaking of comfort, do you enjoy air conditioning at your place? Some of those spots were so hot. Yeah, it was pretty hot in St. Louis this past weekend. It still is. And yeah, we definitely have air conditioning at my house. I think there's some parts of the country where air conditioning is a lot more rare, but in the Midwest, I think air conditioning is pretty common. Brett has a nice comment, mostly for Joe, my director of communications, Joe. He says, just wanted to give your staff member Joe a huge thank you. That's great. I had missed the email about getting the reprint of the Scythe rulebook replacement, and he remembered recently. It was very helpful. Brett is referring to how around this time last year we created a complete rulebook for Scythe. And that first rulebook unfortunately had some errors related to Altama, which was not Team Altama's fault. It was totally my fault for having these errors in this rulebook. And so, for anyone who bought that initial first printing around this time last year, might have even been a little earlier, when we reprinted that rulebook and fixed those errors, we sent out an email saying, if you had this original one with these Altama errors, and especially if you actually used Altama, feel free to let us know and we'll send you a replacement for free. So that's what Brett is referring to there. Justin has a question. Let's see. A question about tutorial apps for board games. He says he played The Night Cage last night and thoroughly enjoyed it. The theme and mechanisms worked very well. The thing, however, I was most impressed about was that the publishers teamed up with a company called Dized to do tutorials. He says, I saw other games on this app as well as Dice Miner and our cartographers. Have you ever heard of this app? What are your thoughts on this idea of teaching a game and not a built-in tutorial like you discussed a few weeks ago? As much as I love built-in tutorials, where you can just kind of sit down and play, I think Dized is a pretty cool service. That's Dized. I think they've just been a little slow to market. They approached us years ago, I think maybe even back in 2015, about putting Scythe on their app. And I know Josh actually spent quite a bit of time working on that for them. And I don't know if Scythe is even today on their app as a tutorial. Maybe the rules are on there, but I'm not sure if the game itself is on there. And so my hope someday is that they get a good formula on their app so that they can really build in a lot of tutorials in a short amount of time. Because I mean, it's been 6 years, and if Scythe still isn't on there, that's way too long for a game that we spent a lot of time on, especially Josh did, to not actually get on the app itself. So I love the concept of it. I just hope they improve the speed at which they can actually incorporate tutorials into their app. That is a cursory impression, though. That it may have changed over time. You might look at it right now. Try check it out, Justin, and let me know if you see Scythe on there. Maybe I'm wrong about it, and it is on there in a full tutorial form. What else is going on? We played some games that I played this past week. I actually filmed 8 videos yesterday, 2 top 10s and 6 videos about games. So I've been playing a lot of new to me games recently, including Exit. Oh, what was the game? It was Exit the Sunken Treasure. I played Mystic Market, played that recently for the first time. I played Paleo, new Kennerspiel winner Paleo, played that for the first time recently, just a couple days ago. That was really interesting. Had some really interesting elements of discovery. Within these Euro mechanisms, it had these really nice elements of story and discovery and exploration that I thought were really cool. What was the other one I played? I have a game right over here. Oh yeah, I played Juicy Fruits. Juicy Fruits was the other one that I checked out. That was fun to give it a try. At a game night last week. And we also played games 9 and 10 of Charterstone, so we're almost done with the Charterstone campaign. Game 9 in Charterstone is one of my favorites. And I have the words magic mystery. Oh, here's what I was referring to. I hosted a magic draft. I was like, what is magic mystery? I hosted a magic draft on Saturday for the mystery boosters draft set that they created last year. So this was a slightly older draft set now, but I'm just getting it to the table now because I couldn't draft in person last year. And it was a lot of fun. It was very interesting, very different to do this mystery booster draft because instead of including like 300 cards in the set like they normally do, they really tapped into the nostalgia of Magic's past and brought in 1,800 cards from the past. So the synergies, you really had to look for and craft your own synergies. There weren't built-in keyword synergies like you might normally find in a Magic draft. So that was very different. Carlos says, I hope your father is in good health. Thank you for saying that, Carlos. I guess a quick update about that. My dad is in the hospital right now. He is undergoing 3 days of chemo, and they're monitoring him for those 3 days in the hospital. And then he'll be released for 3 weeks, and then he'll come back in for more chemo. So his spirit is strong. I talked to him just the other day, but yeah, he is in the hospital right now. So I wouldn't say good health. And Carlos says, I don't think you've already mentioned this, but you've said that you've started to work on a game inspired by the exploration in Breath of the Wild, and that is definitely true. He says, he's kind of saying, what inspired you to even look at this video game to get inspiration? And I actually follow a lot of video games on YouTube mostly. I don't really play video games at all, but I follow them on YouTube to learn from them as a game designer because I think there are a lot of cool things that video games do that we don't see as often in board games, even though they could be translated to board game form. And so yeah, there are a lot of, especially as I've spent quite a bit of time over the last few years working on this open world exploration cooperative game. I spent a lot of time looking into games, video games that do that, because I mean, there are open world tabletop games, but they have a number of limitations. And I think maybe the most open one so far is Sleeping Gods. I really enjoyed that about Sleeping Gods. It is truly open. Like there really aren't many constraints, except there is an edge to the world, basically. But a lot of video games don't have those constraints, and so I've just been fascinated by what video games have done, and I've been trying to learn from that and incorporate that into my games. Garrett says, "Am I still targeting the holiday release for the nesting box, or have all the revisions and global logistics delays pushed it back to next year?" I wouldn't say we really ever targeted a holiday. No, well, Garrett, I should clarify. We definitely weren't targeting a holiday release. That would be very hopeful. The stuff that we printed for the holiday this year, we started that printing months ago, and we're still in the final prototype stage of the nesting box. I will say that one big thing that we've been working on this week is looking at the freight shipping impact on the big box, in particular, the nesting box, because it is significant. Like with many of our products, it isn't that big of a deal, especially since some of our products we sell directly. We were planning to sell the nesting box directly instead of through distribution, so we have better margins there. But I mean, basically, the number that we came up with for currently, if we currently wanted to ship the nesting box, the freight shipping cost alone for the nesting box would be $20. That's actually more than the manufacturing cost of the nesting box. It's a very expensive product to make, and the freight shipping cost is somehow more. Yeah, it's incredible right now to do that, to have that such a high cost for freight shipping. Like normally, in the good old days, it would have been around $5 or $6 for this product to have that. That would be the freight shipping cost, which is high, but it's a giant product. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see it behind me right there. Yeah, it's a giant box. You can't fit that many in a shipping container. But $20 is too much, and we could just increase the cost by $20, but I don't want to do that either. So we are exploring some things that we might do next year regarding the big box. Part of it is I think we need to wait a little bit and hope that freight shipping costs go down. And if they don't, I think what we may do is combine it. Well, not and I want to say this very very clearly as to what we're thinking about. We're not definitely doing this, but one thing that we're thinking about is when we have the next Wingspan expansion, that we would offer the expansion by itself through our website and through distribution. And we would also offer the expansion included inside of the nesting box, just the first print run of it, because that isn't the long-term goal for the nesting box. It's meant to be an empty box, not have gameplay components inside of it. And also, independently of that, offer just the nesting box. And so that way, especially for that first print run, instead of a customer having to pay for this pretty expensive nesting box and the expansion, they can combine the two, save a little cost. They can all ship together. It can be a little bit more concise, and really it helps with the freight shipping costs because we're not shipping two different products when the volume would be the same if we pack the Wingspan expansion inside of the nesting box itself. So there's one thing that we are considering to keep your prices more reasonable, but it does mean that it will probably take longer for us to actually get the nesting box on our website, on our web store. Yeah. Justin says he's confirmed that Scythe is on the Dized app, but it says coming soon. Again, this is an app that we started working with them in 2015. So coming soon, I think. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. Tim says he gave a special shout out on KOPN radio in Columbia on Sunday, along with sporting Stonemaier shirts. Oh, that's awesome that you gave Stonemaier a shout out along with your poetry there, Tim. Thank you for doing that. Board Game Shepherd says, just curious, is your company currently taking submissions? Yeah, we have a submissions page on our website. Feel free to check that out and see what types of games that we're looking for. John says, Edgar's a nice comment about my dad. Thank you, Edgar, for saying that. John says, what is your current most anticipated upcoming game? This is a question that I'm terrible at answering, John, because I'm so focused on the games that I already have rather than the ones that are coming soon. I really have I have very little concept of what is actually coming soon. I'll say this. I am playing Nemesis for the first time this weekend. So Nemesis is not a game that is being released this weekend for the first time, but a friend let me borrow a copy, and I'm learning it and will be teaching and playing it this weekend. And I'm looking forward to that. I've heard great things about Nemesis, and I'm very curious about playing it myself over the weekend. So I'll say that. Frankie says, what game am I enjoying the most right now? Let's see. Of those games, I played a lot of games over the last few days, over the weekend and whatnot. What was my favorite of those? I mean, I really enjoyed the Magic Mystery Booster Draft. Juicy Fruits was cool. Paleo was cool. Hardback was surprisingly fun. I played Hardback on Board Game Arena the other day and had a lot of fun with that. But it is funny that you asked right now because this is the time of the year where I do my biannual favorite top 10 list of the moment, of right now. And so I will be composing that probably next week, and it'll go live later in August. And so I am thinking about that topic right now, but I don't have an answer off the top of my head as to what my let's say my favorite game is right now. I'll figure that out when I put together that top 10 list. Barry said that he just played his first game of Wingspan on his iPad. So glad the iOS version is out now. And Barry, I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the things I wanted to talk about today was digital news. I'm pointing at my other computer screen because I have our digital e-newsletter up here. So Wingspan Digital, now available on iOS from Monster Couch, also available on Xbox. That was a few weeks ago. Between Two Castles of Madkin Ludwig Digital is actually free on Tabletopia with the expansion through July. So if you want to try Between Two Castles with or without the new expansion, they are free on Tabletopia until the end of July. There's also a full digital version that's been available for a while. Viticulture Digital is now available on Board Game Arena. So feel free to check out Viticulture Digital on Board Game Arena. It's also still available in a variety of other places too, like on iOS and like the full AI versions on iOS, Android, and Steam. It's also on Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator, and Board Space. What else? I think that was all the new stuff here. Yeah, that's all the new news that I mentioned recently. There are some other games, like you can go to the digital game section of our website to see how to find the other versions of our games. We have about half of our games available now in full AI versions, and the rest are available on places like Tabletopia, where the AI isn't there, but the game understands the components, and if you understand the game, you can play there with anyone around the world at any time, which I think is pretty cool. Joshua, who just got back from his honeymoon, says that his chocolate of the day is double chocolate espresso fudge from Mackinac Island. I'm guessing maybe that was where your honeymoon was, Joshua. That sounds really delicious. Allison says that her son Jared is just loving Secrets and Soirees. This is her solo gaming son. And she says that here. Thanks again for letting us check that out. As he is our solo game player, he always loves when a game has a good quality solo variant. So thank you for making that a priority. Thank you, Allison, for saying that. And that reminds me of another topic I wanted to mention today, because Allison, and Daniel and Jared and their other son, I'm forgetting the other son's name right now, but they have a YouTube channel called Kidsplaining. And one of the big topics of this week, initiated, I think, partially by a blog post that I wrote on Monday, was I guess the topic was, is it unethical for reviewers to be paid? And I really broke it down into talking about how most people in the game industry are not actually posting reviews. There are a lot of reviews, but a lot of the content you see is like previews, or it's a playthrough, or it's an overview. That's opinion-free content, and that is widely paid for. There are plenty of people that create that content for free, but a lot of it is paid for, or at least a game is provided for a content creator to make that type of content. So there's that, and there's also review content, which is very rarely paid for. But I kind of put forth the assertion in this article of I talked a lot about bias too. So bias was kind of the bridge between these topics. How bias is everywhere. We can't avoid bias as human beings. We're going to be biased, whether or not, even if, so say a reviewer gets a free copy of the game, they might be a little biased there because they got a free copy. But if a reviewer pays for a copy of the game, they're also a little biased because they want to maybe justify that purchase. They want to like that game a little bit more because they spent money on it. So no matter what, the point of it, no matter what, there's bias. And so I guess I posited, just to put it out there, the idea that maybe it's actually not that terrible or not unethical if a reviewer got paid for a review, as long as they are fully transparent about it and they're not being paid for a positive review, and if the publisher, like Stonemaier Games does, doesn't actually watch the review. They don't even know what the reviewer ends up saying, so to remove that element of bias from it. I don't know, the article was all over the place, a lot of different topics, stirred up, I think, a little controversy, not intentionally, but I think I kind of anticipated that people would have different opinions on this topic. But yeah, it was an interesting topic to see a lot of comments on. both on the post on Facebook and on various places on social media about the topic of paid content in the board game industry, and what is okay, what's not okay, with what's ethical, what is not ethical, and what you need to be transparent about, which is pretty much everything. I think it's good to be very transparent if you receive and not just good. I don't just think it's good, but like the Federal Trade Commission says that you must do this. If you are a social media influencer, you must say if you got a free copy of a game. You must say if you were paid to create that content, even if it's opinion-free content. Yeah, big topic there. Feel free to check out that article on our website if you're curious to learn more. Chad says he's starting to learn how to do 3D sculpting. Who do you use to sculpt miniatures? We work with a guy named Heriberto Martinez in Mexico, and he does a fantastic job. Great work on all the miniatures that we have in our games, which is not a ton. We don't have a ton of miniatures in our games, but whenever we have one, I reach out to Heriberto. But it's cool that you're getting into it, Chad. That's awesome. Briss says, what am I currently playing? The only game that I could say I'm actually currently playing is Charterstone, because I'm in the middle of a Charterstone campaign. Tonight, a game night. I don't know what'll happen. People have been bringing games that they've been wanting to play for a really long time to game night, and so I don't know what people are going to bring to game night tonight. We'll find out. Shell says, and thank you, Shell, for clarifying your name pronunciation. Shell's name is spelled Kjell, so I definitely would have mispronounced that. Thank you for doing that. He says, first time joining the livecast from Germany. Oh, nope, sorry, skip to the next one. He says, that's the next person. He says he really liked Red Rising, but one thing that bugged me, since the card holders and metal tokens are all collector's edition only, do you ever consider trying matching the card holders to find metal colors? Yes. So the color matching was a bit difficult with the metal tokens in Red Rising, because we didn't want to paint them. We were kind of discouraged by Panda to paint these tokens, and for a good reason. Like, I wanted the atomized look of these metal tokens, so they not just looked like, or not just felt like metal, but also looked like metal. The problem is the colors for atomized metal are very limited. So instead, we are making metal tokens for Red Rising now that are painted. So they have that nice weight of the metal tokens, but they don't look as fancy because they don't look like metal. They kind of look like plastic from the outside. Unless you pick them up, you don't know that they're metal. And so basically we couldn't color match it, but we are doing that now. We're just kind of saying, okay, it's probably just better to have these painted with the exact color matches. Yeah. Philippe is joining the first time from Germany. He says, I usually enjoy your livecast on YouTube. Yeah, I do post these on YouTube afterwards. So if you're watching this not live and you have a question, feel free to post it on YouTube. That's where I respond to comments after the live portion of this is finished. And he says, I don't know if this is a bit awkward for you, but can you comment about the controversy around your latest blog post? You'll have to let me know what the controversy is, because I've seen the comments on the post itself. And I'm not, like, people have different opinions about like what is ethical or unethical, what is paid or unpaid. I think there was a little surprise from people that I would reveal some of the numbers that we've paid or that we've been offered. But I kind of considered that my information to share. If I pay a content creator something, I have spent that money on it. I think that's my information that's okay for me to disclose. Same thing if I'm offered something. If I'm offered a certain to pay a certain amount of money for something, that it's also then my information that I can disclose. But I think people might have slightly different opinions about that. So I think maybe that's what you're referring to. But let me know if what you're referring to there, and I am happy to address it. Yeah. Sorry, Facebook's doing some weird scrolling things. Tony says that he recently rewatched The Big Bang Theory, and he says in almost every episode they're playing some game. If there was one TV show where the characters were seen playing a Stonemaier game, which one would make me the most excited? Let's say current TV show. What current TV show? I'd say The Mandalorian would be fantastic if The Mandalorian played a Stonemaier game. No, I know that wouldn't happen, but let's see. Alex, who inspired yet another of my blog posts with this bias topic. Alex, I don't know if you saw that, but he says, bias and paid content will always be a recurring topic in this industry, unfortunately. I value most opinions on this subject. The only ones I don't are from the small minority who demand the most from content creators. Demand improved quality, more B-roll, timestamps. They insist they take no money from publishers, and also are people who never support content creators themselves. That he says there's no reason that so many content creators start and then stop in this industry. You have to be fortunate enough to break past a lot of lines for it to be sustainable. Well said, Alex. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And this is kind of a spin-off of what you're saying here, but for some reason, I don't know how you feel about this, but for some reason, one of the one type of comment on my blog, I mean, obviously there's some spam comments and things like that on my YouTube channel, but the one type of comment that tends to rub me a little bit the wrong way is when someone chimes in, oftentimes for the first time, and criticizes something about the channel itself, like the lighting or the sound or something like that, or they ask for like more timestamps and things like that, and I I don't know. It always seems to rub me a little bit the wrong way when someone chimes in with that sort of that sort of unsolicited criticism. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes it's very helpful for me to hear that. For like if like when I didn't know that timestamps were a thing, it was helpful for someone to say, "Hey, I would love it if you added timestamps." But that's rarely how someone says it. They usually say, "This video sucks because there are no timestamps," that sort of thing. But Alex, I'm curious about that. Have you found that there's a productive avenue for people to give you constructive criticism about your videos, about things like the technical stuff, the stuff that you mentioned here, the B-roll, the timestamps, the lighting, the editing, stuff like that. Um, yeah, have you found there's a productive avenue to do that? And maybe what I should do, like once a year, maybe I should just do a video once a year about that topic and make it an open invitation in that video. Say, hey, like here's what's up, here's what I'm currently doing, here's the mic that I'm currently using, or the lighting that I'm currently using, which is just an overhead light in a closed window. What do you think about that? That way, there's a video every year where anyone can chime in and say, "Hey, like this is a open, safe place where I am ready for that feedback and where you can give that feedback." But what do you think about that? I'm sure you have that happen all the time, Alex. I don't know if it irks you the same way it does to me, but have you found a way to productively get people to share feedback at a time and space where you are ready to receive that feedback, where you want that feedback? Yeah, that went a little off topic there, but I'm definitely curious about your thoughts there, Alex. If you feel like chiming in. Brista says, I recently had a not so good experience with Scythe playing only with two players. I felt the game skewed towards the other player because of the faction she played. Any tips, or would you recommend to raise the player count? Um, yeah, I don't know the exact circumstances there, or what if there was a connect. Like you mentioned, two players specifically. I don't know if player count had anything to do with it. But maybe there. So maybe it's your perception that there's a faction that works better at two players, and if that's the case, if you feel that way, and that maybe just don't play with that faction in two-player games. I'd also recommend the modular board. Uh, I designed Scythe to be played with two players and three players and four players and five players. I think the existing board, the original board, works well for those player counts. In that, if in two-player games in particular, the conflict there's plenty more space on the board then, but it's still just as easy to reach out and fight another player because of the tunnel system and because of some of the mech abilities. However, if you like a tighter board and you think that might maybe counteract what you're talking about with the faction here, I don't know which faction it was, I would recommend trying the modular board. Because with the modular board, you can set it up so that there's just a lot less space on the board. You're much closer to the other players on the modular board. Yeah. Frankie says, "Do you think we are in a golden age of board gaming? So much choice and so many good games coming out all the time. It seems time is the limiting factor. I guess it's a good problem to have." And I agree. I agree that it is a wonderful time to be a tabletop gamer. There's so many options, so many great games. Um, the best may be yet to come, but I think we've seen some amazing timeless classics be introduced over the last year, the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and yeah, I'm just happy to be a part of it. I feel very lucky to have this be my career and to be a gamer in this amazing time. Derek says, can you speak to whether or not you are seeing a pull from mainstream retailers and consumers for more public disclosures of environmental and social impacts and efforts to mitigate? For example, Target. Um, I haven't really, Derek. I can't say that I have. Uh, I don't know if I've ever heard from a retailer asking us to do something more environmentally friendly. However, that is important to us, and so we have taken a number of measures over the years to make our games more environmentally friendly. Um, a number of which I've discussed on my blog. We use recycled cardboard, recycled plastic. We try not to include disposable stuff, especially not disposable plastic in our games. Like any plastic that's in our games is there for a purpose to remain in the game, except for shrink wrap. And we've been working to remove shrink wrap from our games whenever possible. We've actually converted to a corn-based dissolvable plastic bag. I don't think they've actually appeared in our games yet, but the current print run of our games that's in production, they now have plastic bags that are a little less pretty than other plastic bags, but if someone does throw them away, they will dissolve and compost over time, and not even like decades and decades. Over like 3 to 4 years, they will compost and dissolve. So it's on our minds all the time. But no, I have not heard much of that from retailers or distributors at all. George says, I noticed that all packages coming from the UK to the EU are having some shipping delays and they are delivered in rough conditions. He says, Spiral Galaxy are awesome and have great customer service, but the shipping itself towards the EU becomes difficult from all viewpoints. That's interesting to know, George. Thank you for letting me know that. I agree that Spiral Galaxy is awesome. I think and I understand that there are some additional delays. I think we all understand that in these times. But delivered in rough conditions is a little concerning to me. And do you know why? Can you pinpoint why? Because I know they leave Spiral Galaxy in good condition. What is different now than before about why that package may arrive in worse condition now than it was before? Because I think it uses the same venue or the same courier, same services to get from there to you than before. So what has changed about that? Let me know if you have any thoughts about that. Okay, Alex is responding to my long comment question about constructive criticism. He says, constructive criticism is helpful. It's the reason I have timestamps now. I don't mind polite requests and take them into account. So he has an example here. So a nice example is, I'd love more B-roll in these list videos versus needs B-roll, unwatchable. That's well said, Alex. Unfortunately, I think I more often see the latter than the former, but maybe I need to cultivate a more welcoming environment for people to say it a little bit nicer. He says, and that's a great idea. I 100% should do a video on requesting feedback. It should be a yearly video at a minimum. Alex, I'm going to write down the same thing on my list of videos. I will put open feedback video on my list of videos to talk about. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, curious to see what type of feedback I get if I do that. But just like having that, even if I just do it once and then forget about it for a while, whenever I do get that type of feedback, I can point someone towards that video and say, hey, like, here's the video you should watch about feedback, and here's the place to post it. So there is a specific place for that. It's nice to have a home for that sort of feedback. Okay, Felipe was the one who asked about the controversy regarding my post about ethics and paid content in the game industry. And he says, I would say that I believe that some people in the industry have a distorted image of you and your intentions bringing out this topic. For example, I noticed that the wonderful people at Our Family Plays Games, which I tried to defend in my article, got slightly offended by you mentioning them. And yeah, I know our relationship with Our Family Plays Games is somewhat contentious through my own fault, solely my own fault, where I made it really a terrible mistake by a publisher last year. I called them out publicly for not posting a review of a game that I thought they were going to post a review of. Totally in the wrong for doing that. I apologized to them publicly and privately, and I felt terrible about it. I still feel terrible about it. And so I think I think maybe it was a little odd to see a comment from them on the post that I wrote the other day, because in that post I was essentially saying last year Our Family Plays Games it offered a paid review to Stonemaier Games that I didn't accept, and I thought it was a little odd at the time. But the more that I thought about it and learned about bias in the industry and what is okay or not okay, I actually don't think it's that weird that they would ask for that. They spend a lot of time and effort putting together their videos, as all content creators do, and I would struggle to say at this point that I think it's unethical for a reviewer to ask for payment. I don't know if we would do it. I don't know if we would pay for a review. And certainly we would never pay for a positive review. It would be completely separate. The content of the review would be completely separate from the payment. But the post was me essentially defending that practice and saying the only example that I have is Our Family Plays Games, and I can now see why they would do that, given how much time and effort they spend on their videos. I get it now. I was a little caught off guard by their comment a little bit, but I think part of it was the history, and maybe they just saw the headline of the article. They didn't really, or maybe they didn't read the article before posting the comment. I don't know, but I think we straightened it out in the comments of my post where I tried to clarify that I was actually kind of trying to stick up with it for them. But I understand the history behind it may have made it a little more awkward than it needed to be. Yeah. But I think, Felipe, unfortunately, I think you're right well, I won't go into that. I think people are entitled to their perceptions of me, and at least part of that is based on fact, and hopefully all of it's based on fact. If they want to have a poor opinion of me, hopefully they're using actual facts to do so. Yeah. Carlos says, board games exist in the Star Wars universe since Sabacc, a simple card game, is part of the canon. So there's no reason to think that Tapestry couldn't be sold in some planets of the galaxy. That's an interesting thing. I guess it is perceived as a galaxy far, far away, and not necessarily in the future. But hypothetically, if Star Wars does take place in the future, then modern games could feasibly still be being played in the Star Wars universe in that future. Yeah. Patrick is talking about shipping delays. Yeah. I think George is talking about specifically ordering a product that we have in stock in the UK and that it just takes longer to get to where George is now. I think, is it Turkey, George? Let me know where you are. Peter says, nobody likes to be critiqued in public. If I have something to say to someone that might be taken as criticism, I do it via email or DM and in a professional, positive way. That's awesome, Peter. I don't think many people do that, but I think it's awesome that you're willing to do that. Most responses I have received on the very few times I've done that are genuinely thankful as they see that I'm trying to help them and not publicly embarrass them. And I think that's the key there. The one thing I'd counter there, Peter, or consider, is that sometimes I get private feedback, great intentions, people being very kind about the feedback, offering me feedback, and but it's actually, I often end up referring them to posting that feedback publicly because I want to see if others agree with them before I act on that feedback. And usually it's the types of things like it might be a comment about a specific game, or like, I wish you could do this thing with this game, or I see this problem with this game of yours, and I want to know more about it. I want to know, why you designed it this way, or here's my house rule solution. What do you think about this? And for that type of stuff, it's actually more helpful to post it in public so that other people can chime in and offer their perspectives. People can work together to find a solution, and sometimes the person can see that, oh, they were missing something, and that others can helpfully help them see what they were missing. Whereas for me to respond to all of those comments and critiques in detail would be impossible and would be kind of isolated, because I would only be helping that one person, whereas other people might have the same question, the same concern, the same problem, and they wouldn't know about it unless they posted it publicly. So I think maybe there's a healthy mix of both, but I'm glad it sounds like your intentions are always to help and you do that privately, and I think that's wonderful. Patrick says, organic bags and shrink wrap make me nervous. If the package gets wet, the plastic will stick to the contents. Well, yeah, Patrick, we don't have a solution for shrink wrap yet. You're right, the purpose of shrink wrap is to protect the game until you open it, and we don't have a solution for that. But plastic bags, using this corn-based plastic, dissolvable plastic, we've actually asked that same question. I was like, after a couple of years, is it just going to become this muddy mess in the box? And the answer is no, that's not the case. All that happens is that the bag gets a little weaker. And so over time, the bag will be less useful, but there are plenty of plastic bags. So what if if a little plastic bag is slightly less useful 3 years from now than it is today? That's not a big deal. But no, it won't. And getting wet, we also did a wet test. So I got these plastic bags wet, and they hold up just fine. They actually hold up quite well against water, just like any other plastic bag. It's still plastic. Yeah. Chad says, Chad pointed out to Brist that there are a few faction and faction mats and player mats inside that we have kind of officially banned for people who are somewhat experienced with Scythe. That we just say that you shouldn't play with these combinations. There's two of them in particular. They're in the rule book. They're also in the FAQ. So it's possible that the person that Brist competed against had one of those combinations. Tim says that he's getting Burger Brothers to the table tonight. How does this hold up to the sequel? I actually found that I think I prefer the original Burger Brothers. I appreciate what the designer did with the sequel. And some of the setup stuff is really, really cool, but I actually really enjoy the original. And Tim, I would highly recommend, don't play with 3 levels. Just play a 2 level game. I think it's the sweet spot for the length of the game, the difficulty of the game. And even with the sequel, they removed the 3rd level anyway. I think they kind of acknowledged, hey, we don't need this 3rd level. Play a 2 level game of Burgle Brothers. Highly recommend that. Cody says, this is a very minor issue, but have you ever thought about adding a filter option on your web store to only show items that are currently in stock? That's an interesting question, Cody. Um, that's a great idea. Only show in stock. Or at least have that option. You can select like only see in stock stuff. I will talk to our web developer about that. Show only in stock. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. Let's see. Alex says that he understands why our family plays games was upset. Again, I don't know if they actually read the full article before commenting. It may have been a quick reaction to what other people had told them I was saying, or maybe they read it. I don't know. But it seemed like after we talked about it in the comments a little bit, they saw that I was not calling them unethical. I was actually kind of saying the opposite, which made me think that maybe they hadn't read the full article. Um, but Alex says, I agree with Jamie that he certainly has the right to share it. You can't sign someone else up for a secret they didn't ask for. But I also understand that people might not want their policies or pricing fully exposed. It's one of the reasons I specifically make a point of telling my audience, this is Alex talking, I'm reading Alex's comment. I specifically make a point of telling my audience things that go on behind the scenes to avoid this drama. For example, a policy I have for a preview that I really disliked, I'll offer not to cover it. I don't think my audience will like that, and some didn't when I told them, but I'd rather them find out from me than someone else. And yeah, Alex, this touches upon the idea of transparency. I really would love to see more transparency in the game industry. Like, I think the corollary that I think of is, it's like if someone went to our website and we didn't have any of the prices on our website. That would be weird, right? Like if you didn't find out the price of one of our games on our website, like we publicly share the prices of our website. I even publicly share the cost of how much it costs to make our games. Um, Even though that requires quite a bit of context to explain, the discounts that distributors get and all that other stuff. Uh, but the pricing, I'd say a little bit weird. In practices like that, I think it's great that you're just transparent about that. You say like, this is what I do. This is what I do in general. This is what I did for this product. Um, I would love to see more transparency and less secrecy in the game industry, and I think that will increase trust more as a whole within the industry and within the gaming community. I think trust is kind of at a pretty big issue right now. People not trusting reviewers, or I saw so many people actually commented with the article saying, you know, um, this reviewer gave this game a really positive review, even though other people didn't like it. They must be lying, or they must be holding something back, and that just baffles me a little. Oh, actually, no. The assertion oftentimes when people said that was they must be getting paid for that. And Alex, you've talked about it on your channel. That's just it just baffles me. Like obviously there's bias. There is bias, but people getting paid to post positive reviews. I still have not seen documented evidence of that. If it exists, I have not seen it, and I don't know if anyone actually has proof of it. But I think for us to get to that point, I think we need to be a lot more transparent about our practices and our fees and our all that stuff, so people know that this information is out there. Um, I don't think it hurts anyone to be out there, especially if you provide proper context behind it. Um, yeah. Yeah. Xavier says, is it safe to assume that the Wingspan expansions are slowly heading to the console PC version one by one? I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you there, Xavier. I think it's safe to assume that, but it's entirely up to Monster Couch. They definitely have the files for those expansions, and they're working on it. But that's their internal process to work through. And I think it never hurts to let them know that you are excited about something, about them adding a feature, so they have the extra impetus and drive to work on it. That's Monster Couch again, not us. We don't work on the digital development of our games. Frankie says, do you ever think you'll do a game similar to Scythe again, or do you think that you've done that type of game and want to do other types of games? I'm asking because I love Scythe. I'm curious what a more experienced Jamie could do with that genre. I do enjoy experimenting and doing different things with every game that I make, both different in terms of what I've made in the past and different than what's already out there in the gaming industry, what's out there on the market. That said, I do love the world, the 1920 plus world that Jakob created. And I've said for a while now that I am open to revisiting that world, not for Scythe itself, not another Scythe expansion. Scythe itself is done. But in the Scythe world, the 1920 plus world, I am open to making another game in that world, as long as it's completely different than Scythe or distinctly different from Scythe. Edgar says, I'm having a hard time in the hobby because I usually bring games to game night and mostly they never get played, especially from friends. There's usually alpha gamers that decide what's being played, and I'm not comfortable being vocal about playing my game. It feels uneasy and awkward. I'm struggling with this, feeling left out lately. Hopefully it'll get better. I'm so sorry to hear that, Edgar. That sucks. Yeah, that really sucks. Especially when you bring something that you're really excited to play multiple times and no one else is excited to play that, and to have alpha style gamers who usually I hear that term in quarterback in terms of cooperative games, but alpha gamers who just like kind of select for the group and speak for the group. And sounds like they're just not being very respectful to your feelings and your preferences, and I'm really sorry to hear that. Hopefully, you can find some people that maybe are a little bit more open to playing games with you and playing the things that you're excited to play. Um, and maybe just to throw this out there, maybe you can suggest some sort of a system with those friends, and maybe by email, maybe not in person. I'm more of an email person myself, but you can email the group and say, hey, like, I've had these games that I'm really excited to get to the table. Is there maybe one of them that we could play at game night this week, or like schedule ahead in 2 weeks? Yeah, I don't know. I know you're not looking for a solution here, but I empathize with you, and I'm really sorry you're going through that, Edgar. Garrett says Star Wars takes place in the past. I totally missed that. Oh, long time ago. You're right. Galaxy, long time ago. Yeah. Well, yeah. Then the modern games can't fit into Star Wars. It feels futuristic, but you're right. Um, George is in Romania, not Turkey. I'm sorry, George. He says, I've recently received 3 packages from 3 different UK gaming stores, plus 2 from Starville Galaxy, and they all arrived damaged. Perhaps the extra custom service from one country to another, or the courier itself. I guess that could be it. And that could be the only. Although the customs was always there. Customs, I don't think is any different now than it was before. So I don't know about that. Patrick says that payment creates bias. Totally, Patrick. That's one of many examples of bias that we all experience with everything we do, and that's kind of the point of the article. Check out the article because payment is a does create bias, but it is completely unavoidable to have some form of bias when you review a game, whether it's paid, it's unpaid, whether you know the designer, whether you don't know the designer. Every element, there's going to be bias in it. Read the article, watch Alex's video on Board Game Co. about bias. I think you'll learn. I think it might open your eyes a little bit to it. Yeah. Although, hey, let me read the rest of Patrick's comment before I get there. I didn't want to dismiss the rest of the comment. Patrick says, Consumer Reports doesn't use ads for the products they review for that very reason. I work in a university library, and there's a huge controversy over pay to publish and peer-reviewed materials not being as trustworthy in the past. I can definitely see that. Yeah. Brett says, I can't remember who said it, but one of the content creators I watch said it's weird that game content creators are getting so much flack for being paid for their time to review. Although I'll come back to that in a second. But papers, magazines, and many others have done the same thing for decades. And the easy way to blame content creators is that they aren't big companies. They're just a few people, so it's easy to pick on. That's interesting. And Brett, I would throw out there that I actually have I shared an example in my blog post about Our Family Plays Games, but apparently they no longer do that practice. They don't. The one example I had doesn't even accept money for reviews now, and so I don't know if there's anyone in the game industry. I don't know if there are any reviewers who are even accepting money for reviews right now. I haven't had anyone share an example with me of a reviewer that's doing that. Specifically, a reviewer. A reviewer is creating sharing their opinion about a game. And I don't even have examples of that yet. So this first part of your comment saying that creators are getting so much flack for being paid for their time to review. I don't know if that's even happening. But you're right. In other industries, it is somewhat common, I think, for reviewers to get compensation. And yeah. Briss says, I'm really excited about the Wingspan Big Box. Any news? The latest news is on our website so far. It was the post was a few weeks ago when I got the latest prototype. I'm waiting on a few tweaks to be made, and then that'll be the final prototype. And then we'll move forward when freight shipping gets a little better, because we currently cannot The price to you would be way too high if we made it right now and shipped it with today's freight shipping prices. Paul says, "Have I played Juicy Fruits yet?" Yeah, Paul let me borrow his copy of Juicy Fruits. Paul, I did play it. Played it at game night on Thursday and really enjoyed it. Really clever game, Juicy Fruits. It's a game, and the core mechanism is that there's a grid, and you are taking a token on that grid, a tile, and you are sliding it as far as you can in one orthogonal direction and gathering the number of resources equal to how far you slide it. And I had a lot of fun with it. It's a game that I'll talk about on my YouTube channel, Paul, in the pretty near future. I think I'm kind of ahead of schedule right now, so I think it'll be in like mid-August or a week or so when I'll talk about it on my channel. Let's see. Matt says, um, last week people made drama for you about your BGG ratings, and this week content creators are that you're praising or getting defensive. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. Yeah, the BGG rating thing was interesting last week. I rated a game that I didn't like pretty low on Board Game Geek, and maybe I shouldn't have, but I ended up deciding to put a lot more context into that rating that I posted of a game that I truly did not enjoy. And that's okay. I don't enjoy every game. I can still find something positive, but definitely learn from playing this game. Learn a lot from playing this game. Trevor has a suggestion for Edgar here. He says, we have a group that alternates who gets to select games for game night, and then the rest of us play those games. And yeah, actually, that's kind of what I was trying to get at, Trevor, in a very awkward way. That if you create some sort of formal system among your game groups so that everyone can at least have one game that they're excited about getting played once a month, that can make a big difference, I think, for everyone at that game night. So, Trevor, I think that's a wonderful suggestion for Edgar to maybe propose to his gaming group. Chad says, what are your feelings about anyone wanting to sell game tokens or t-shirts that are themed after your games? I love my Scythe and Viticulture t-shirts that Maple Source makes. I see their small print that says, these shirts are not official Stonemaier Games products. Is that mainly what you require? I do have a blog post about this, Chad. If you check out if you search Stonemaier Games for like third-party accessories, you will see our guidelines for that. And the basic idea is that we are very excited for anyone to make third-party accessories for our games, whether they're t-shirts, whether they're fancy dice towers, things like that. Not gameplay stuff, but components. We're excited for people to do that. We love seeing the creativity from people, creators big and small, who do that. But they need to come to us and get our guidelines, which are posted online. But there's also a one-page guideline that basically says that you need to make it very clear that it's not an official Stonemaier product. You need to not ask anything of us. Don't ask us for private files. Don't ask us for marketing favors. We are independent of you if you're creating something like this. And don't make gameplay content as another part of it. And also don't use our trademark terms. So there are a few guidelines to do it. But beyond that, they can just run with it. There's no royalties or anything like that. They can just run with it and make something cool that people who love our games can enjoy. But yeah, there is official guidelines for it, and there's a little agreement that they need to sign to make sure we're on the same page. David says, money is definitely accepted for Kickstarter previews, how to plays, and playthroughs. Yes, that is non-opinion content. I detail a whole lot more than that. There's like 10 different categories on my list, on my blog post, of non-opinion content that is paid for. That's different than reviews. Garrett says, would Rado's final thoughts be considered a review? Absolutely. Yeah, Rado's final thoughts are absolutely considered a review. Yeah. Joshua says, I think previews are typically paid, reviews are usually not, and that is correct. Yeah. Patrick says, I've seen several reviewers that get paid, but they asked before and that the review is paid and that reviewers should take the review with a grain of salt. Patrick, I'd love to hear some examples there, because I have not seen that. What I have seen is something more like Rado, where Rado says, I was paid for this playthrough, and now I'm going to offer my opinion. I was not paid for this opinion. I was paid for the playthrough, and I'm going to share some thoughts with you now. I think that's transparent. I think that's perfectly fine. And I think a lot of people see some overlap there. They wonder, okay, like really, like people know that Rado offers his opinions as part of playthroughs. So isn't he kind of getting paid for that review too? And in a way, I can see that. But I think typically when we see that, the person is paid for the non-opinion content, and then on their own accord, they add the opinion content. And either way, they should be transparent that they were paid for any of that content, or they were provided for a game for any of that content. I mean, I don't just say that as my opinion. That is like the that is what is legal. You are legally required to do that. Yeah. Cody says, I know you're not usually a solo gamer, but have you played or looked at Under Falling Skies? I'm excited to try it, but no, I have not played it. Let me see before I forget if there's any topics that I forgot to cover today. I've been playing a lot of Abandon All Artichokes recently. I did my favorite mechanism video on that the other day. Really enjoyed that. Really, really cool game. A deck unbuilding game. Played disc golf this past weekend with some new discs that were, this is a really cool thing, but some professional disc golfers that I have followed on a channel called Jomez Pro reached out to me and sent me some of their favorite discs. And I sent them some of our games because apparently they're gamers too. So it was this fun exchange between disc golfers and gamers and someone who runs a game company. And I got to finally throw these discs at a course this past weekend. We went out there with Megan. Megan got her first par, which was awesome to see. And I had a lot of fun learning how to throw these new discs because every disc has a different curve to it, different weight to it. Every disc flies a little differently. I had a great podcast chat recently with the guys at 10-Minute Designer Chat. You can probably see it all over Twitter if you look on Twitter for @JamieStegmaier because they posted a couple times on there. And this past Friday, was the retail release date for Between Two Castles, Secrets and Soirees, the new expansion for Between Two Castles. So if you've been waiting to get that from your retailer of choice, it is now available from them worldwide in English. I think that's all the topics. I covered some of the topics earlier today, and I think I've covered everything now. So I'll spend a few more minutes on questions and then head out for the day. Thank you so much for all of you for joining me for this conversation today. I always have a good time with this. David says, curious if you decided to back Distilled and any thoughts you can share on why you didn't pick it up after the design day. I don't think it was actually being pitched to us for design day. I think Dave went into it saying, I want to put this on Kickstarter. I haven't backed it yet. I'm still kind of on the fence about it. I'm very picky about what I back on Kickstarter these days, but I love to see the project doing well. I've seen Dave on so many different podcasts and whatnot. I think he's doing a great job of talking about it and marketing it. And I know he spent a ton of time and effort putting this game together. So I'm so happy to see it doing well. Patrick says, Rado is what I was thinking. I didn't want to call him out in case I was mistaken. You may be right about the playthrough final thoughts difference, though. I'm pretty sure that is the case. And I think Rado is very clear when he has that break between the two. Like he often says, like, hey, look, I was paid for the playthrough. Take my opinions with a grain of salt here. I was not paid for my opinions, but I was paid for some part of this content here. So I think Rado is typically very transparent about that. Yeah, something I admire about him. I also want to give a shout out to Tantrum House. Tantrum House does a lot of previews and overviews, things like that. And not only are they transparent about that, but they post their prices publicly and openly as well. That's pretty rare for them to do that, for content creators to do that. And I really admire that. So I wanted to give a shout out to the channel Tantrum House for being transparent about their prices. I think that's awesome. Yeah. I will end on that note today about transparency. Actually, one other question here. Chad says, did you find that you assign your favorite color to one of your favorite factions in a game that you're designing? I don't know. I do love playing red, but I try to separate that when I work on the game design and art direction and stuff like that. Yeah. All right, I'm going to head out for the day. I'm going to put this up on YouTube. So if you have any other questions or comments or thoughts, feel free to post them there. And I will see you next Wednesday. Take care and have a great day.